Okay. We have a little bit of echo going on? Great, excellent. Okay, hi, my name is Julian Harper, one of the co-founder members of 100 Blacks in Law Enforcement Who Care, and you are watching Community Cop. And I am here with two of my co-hosts today. First of all, Noel Leader.
Peace, say it loud, I'm black and I'm proud.
And second of all, Big Mike.
Namaste.
Michael Graves. And as you guys know, this is a live program, and in approximately 25 minutes or so, our phone lines will open, and you guys will have an opportunity to discuss some of the things that we talk about, as well as bringing up some of your own topics that we will comment on. As customary, first of all, I'd like to say hello to the couple that I met, I believe it was yesterday or the other day while I was out shopping, who saw me and recognized me from Community Cop, and they said they love the show, and we appreciate you guys watching. Thanks for watching, and I love the love and the shout out that you guys showed me, so I appreciate it. Thank you. But as usual, we have a historical piece by our in-house historian, Michael Graves. First, we'll talk about the Battle of Little Bighorn.
Well, yeah, and I'm having fun with this because Noel said we should bring up an American hero, and I said, yeah, well, it's not Custer, it's Chief Crazy Horse. Mm-hmm. So in any event on this day, we'd like to just point out and remind those that certainly there were lies on top of lies to the native nations all over the country, and certainly they were systematically killed, they were poisoned, their animals were slaughtered, they were removed from historical lands that they believed that God gave them. But certainly in this one last stand that they had, their last true great victory was there at Little Bighorn, where all of the various Sioux nations and all the other native nations in that area got together, which Custer could not conceive. General George Armstrong Custer, he could not conceive unity among Native Americans since they did everything to keep them at odds with each other. But on this one glorious day, they all came together and understood they had one historical enemy, one outright unretractable enemy that doesn't bend, bow, negotiate, none of that, that just relentless and obsessive in his attack to control and to take that which you have. So on that day, that glorious day, they all got together, and when all those various divisions came in to their land, they took care of business with God, with God's assistance, and they were able to systematically take them all out, kill everybody that was on their land, and anybody that escaped that day was lucky because they got them all. They basically got various generals and colonels and that led all these various commands into their holy land, and they destroyed them all to the chagrin of Noel Leader, who loves Custer.
Yes, that's a little known historical fact about the numerous wars the American government declared against indigenous populations. Some people think it was just one or two wars, like the one that Michael might have mentioned, and a few others. But there were hundreds and hundreds of years.
That's right.
Various indigenous nations were at war with America. And to fast forward to something that President Trump said recently when he was talking about the agitation he's initiating with Iran, he said the United States is a peace-loving nation. If you look at the history of America, and I challenge anybody to look up Wikipedia, American wars, especially, and it lists all of them, especially against the indigenous nation. There was numerous wars, declarations of wars that the United States attacked indigenous population all throughout the country, not only the West because they was all over the Americas, right. But the United States have only been in peace for about 20 years of its history. So when President Trump says America is a peace-loving nation, her history doesn't match up to that comment.
That's
right. You can say that, but historians all know that the United States have been in war for 93% of its existence, and primarily against the indigenous population.
And when you talk about the relationship between the invaders of this nation and the indigenous people, the United States has always glorified their connection to taking this land from the indigenous people. So they've always made themselves the heroes. When you look at when they tell their history, when you look at the way they portray their history in movies and in
Right.
television, they're always the heroes. But they decimated, the indigenous people of this land. And, you know, I always, when I have conversations with people about that period, I always ask them, how many indigenous people do you personally know in this nation right now, that you personally know? And the numbers are normally zero or very few. So when you talk about that historical part of this nation and how they dealt with the indigenous people of the land, I mean, it is horrific. And I mean, it should trouble every member of this nation whenever they have a conversation or they think about how the indigenous people on this land was attacked and just decimated by the United States.
Genocide.
All right. Michael, also, the birthday of Kwame Ture is coming up very soon.
Yes, it's on the 29th, and certainly one does not have to look back that far to really remember the great work of Kwame Ture, also known at one time as Stokely Carmichael. Brother Kwame Ture, who was a leader as a student, who Attorney Maddox used to say that was hardly ever in school because he was so good that he would come to school and take the test, and he would go back down south. He would be either with Dr. King or some other leadership, or he would be with SNCC and traveling all over the country, fighting for the liberation of our people. And then he would go back occasionally to Howard and ace all the tests and go back down south or out in the Midwest, wherever duty called him. He was an incredible leader in SNCC and certainly the Black Panther Party, then his own organization, All African People's Revolutionary Party. He used to always come to UAM and always tell people, organize, organize, organize. He loved speaking at UAM, loved their gathering, 700, 800 deep, crowded, no room. He loved those kind of, events like that, always enjoyed coming to Brooklyn and speaking at the United African Movement. And the brother was so warm and always told us stories about Cuba and various places. He in Vietnam where he went, how he was in ditches where the American soldiers were walking by and he stood with our brothers over there. It was just incredible, the stories he could tell you and the walk that he walked. It was untouchable, the things that he was able to do in his young life. And then certainly as the years moved on, he was still just as strong. So we should never forget the contributions of Kwame Ture.
Right. And when you go over his history, it's amazing how many organizations, how many prominent nationalist organizations he was affiliated with. And as you stated, he coined the phrase that our people aren't poor, we're just poorly organized.
Right.
And as you stated, he said organize, organize, organize. So big kudos, and we should never forget the contributions that Brother Kwame Ture made to our elevation.
Right. And, it's so important, and as you always quote him, I always quote you quoting him.
He used to.
I always quote you quoting him. And, I was, as I stated, I met a couple the other day, and they were very astute, they were very sharp, and they were very passionate about the trials that our people go through. And again, I appreciate meeting them and just having that conversation. But I always, quote you quoting Kwame Ture, saying that our people aren't just poorly organized. So, but Noel.
Yes, sir.
All right. We were talking about the Philadelphia police officers that were put on administrative leave for the social media probe that's going on there. They made some they were making some racist posts on Facebook, and also now there's 300 officers at least, to my knowledge, being investigated for that same under that same probe.
Yeah, but those who may not know, there's these particular sites where police officers and members of the law enforcement community normally come together to converse. And an organization had did a review of some of the comments. I know those of us in New York City remember NYPD Rant, where many New York City police officers expressed themselves in a very racist, disrespectful, inflammatory, and hateful manner, posting some very despicable language as it relates to, in particular, African-American people and Latinos as well. Well, in Philadelphia, Richard Ross, who's the police commissioner of the Philadelphia Police Department, has suspended over 72 police officers for engaging in this vile and contemptible language, racist language. And, you know, people who defend the police officers are saying that police officers have a right to freedom of speech. And yes, police officers do have a right to freedom of speech, but you cannot in a public forum, and you should not at all, but especially in a public forum, articulate hateful language to people that you're supposed to serve. You relinquish your right to have the position as a police officer who's one supposed to protect and serve the public, irregardless or regardless. Hate that word, irregardless. Regardless of the reflection of the community. So for police officers to have this awesome power, this awesome responsibility by the state, by taxpayers, you know, if you decide to be a police officer, you cannot manifest this kind of hate, this kind of disrespect for the population that you are supposed to serve. You know, if you want to invoke your freedom of speech rights, if you want to invoke the rights to have this hateful language or to express yourself in a racist, derogatory, hateful manner, then you relinquish your ability to be a public servant or serve in the capacity as a police officer. So big kudos to this police commissioner who said in no uncertain terms that he was very disappointed, and he intends to deal with every police officer who engaged in this hateful language. And, you know, if somebody speaks this way, you can only imagine the way that they treat, and this is one of the dangerous things. If they speak this hateful language and if they speak in such hateful manner, you can only imagine how they treat members of the particular community that they express themselves in such a hateful way. So in no way, shape, or form do they deserve to be police officers. We understand there's a constitution and a freedom of speech, but you relinquish your right to be a police officer when you conduct yourself in such a way.
Michael, I always talk about how sometimes law enforcement dehumanizes our community, dehumanizes the communities that they serve. And as Noel stated, if you have this mindset, this perception of the community you serve, can you really serve that community with fairness, unbiasedness, and with the same equity that you serve other communities?
Of course not. Well, because from the outset, certainly words reflect thoughts, and thoughts dictate action. Now, when one considers that Frank Rizzo, and I have to bring up Frank Rizzo, even though Noel mentioned the current police commissioner, you cannot talk about Philadelphia Police Department without mentioning Frank Rizzo, the most brutal police commissioner, if not of all time. Then give me another one more brutal, than him. Certainly no one on the East Coast has distinguished himself or herself the way that Frank Rizzo did. He is by far the most brutal, probably police, not individual, because who knows who killed how many people. But I'll say that as a supervisor, certainly he went through every rank of the Philadelphia Police Department, starting with him being a high school dropout that got on the police force at that time, and certainly went through the ranks of patrolman, sergeant, lieutenant, captain, what have you. Went through every rank in the Philadelphia Police Department and was hateful and brutal in every rank. Oddly enough, he was the first police commissioner to allow black cops to even ride in a car. No other police commissioner before Frank Rizzo would do that. He was so brutal and so hateful that all the black cops were surprised when he allowed them to ride in police cars like their white counterparts. Well, his seeds to this very day, and he also rose to the rank, and I'm calling it rank, of mayor. So he was brutal as a, police commissioner, as a chief. He was brutal as a mayor. Could not stand the sight of looking at a black person and wouldn't allow any black person in his presence express themselves. That's why he was brutal on move, and that's why he did the very things he did. His seeds, his cubs, are still in leadership positions to this very day even though he's dead, in the Philadelphia Police Department. So you should never be surprised. And I'm glad to hear that now I think it's up to 5 members of the MOVE family have returned after 35, 40 years. Some of them over 40 years in jail are getting out now, but that residue still exists. Philadelphia is one of the most brutal police departments in American history, bar none, and that's a black town. So all their guns are pointed at the black community. All of their nightsticks are pointed at the black community. Every knee, punch, fist, everything you can imagine is aimed and trained on the black community to destabilize and destroy blacks from ever rising to any type of leadership in Philadelphia. And to this day, it's been working. That's why they are at odds with each other, blacks, because if they ever organized for one moment, there would never be another white elected official citywide in Philadelphia government, and all the top brass in the Philadelphia Police Department should be black and conscious of their surroundings.
All right. Noel.
Yes, sir.
Now, Bernie Sanders, I know you can't wait to vote for that man. He's talking about a $1.6 trillion college to deal with the deficit for that the American people have in college loans, and also a $2.4 trillion for, or is that million? Maybe, I mean billion, trillion for free education in America. And I know you and I were having a conversation. You were talking about looking at that, and he's opposed to reparation as it's being presented.
Yeah, well, you know, just as these Democratic presidential candidates vie for the top spot in the Democratic nomination, they're coming out with these new plans. Bernie Sanders came out with this progressive, what some consider to be very progressive, offering to pay $1.6 trillion to pay off college tuition. So everyone who has a college loan out there, he's stating an initiative to buy their loans or pay off their loans. Also, he's talking about $2.4 trillion, $2.2 or $2.4 trillion to make education in America totally free. Now, $2.4 trillion, $2.2 trillion is a lot of money, and I'm for free education in this country. I believe when you look at other countries that are not as so-called affluent as the United States of America, you know, they have free education. Cuba has free education,
right.
You know, and Libya under Gaddafi. So I'm all for free education. But, you know, as you stated, when I thought about the large amount of money that this was going to cost, and when Bernie Sanders was asked about reparations for African Americans, he dismissed that as, you know, not a plausible possibility, you know, and primarily because no one wants to pay for reparations. But yet, you know, when they talk about monies in all these other areas, you know, America can come up with money. Of course, Barack Obama spent more than a few $1 trillion to bail out Wall Street, to bail out certain banks. So they can find, this nation can find money when they want to spend money. But, you know, so when people talk about the notion of African Americans receiving reparations, and reparations by definition is to recompense somebody who's been done a wrong, you know, when they just dismiss that as being plausible, you know, it's offensive to me. But they can come up with these big money schemes, you know, for a whole lot of other programs. So I think this is going to bump them up. Of course, it appeals to a whole lot of people who probably have, you know, college loans out there.
Yeah.
But like I said, I just wanted to make the nexus, you know, your words, you know, between America's ability to come up with trillions, and we're not even talking about the military budget. We're not talking about the trillions of dollars that President Donald Trump gave to rich folks, the tax break that he gave to rich folks, trillions. Obama for Wall Street and banks, trillions. Bernie Sanders talking about billing, you know, paying off loans. $2.4 trillion for free education, trillions. But when you talk about reparations for Africans, for the descendants of enslaved Africans in this country, you know, everybody throws their hand, well, where's that money going to come from? So I find it offensive and, you know, very, very contradictory.
Yeah, and it's very duplistic. It's, you know, the duplicity that exists when they talk about reparations for African people, and monies that they find for things that are not, that may not be as, and I don't want to say as important, but things that they can either wait for, or things that can be addressed or dealt with in another way or another form or another fashion. But I mean, we understand that that's about white supremacy, that's about the lack of respect and disdain and the hate for African people, so we're not surprised. But they always bring that up because I believe that they always want to attempt to influence African people to receive their votes. And it's the same thing. We always get the same, they're trying to appease us for whatever reason or for whatever issues, but when it comes for them to put their foot to the fire, you know, they never respond. You know, it's never truly addressed. It's never truly responded to.
And let me say real quick, he tries to, pose this initiative as if it's really reflective, going to benefit African Americans, even though there's some African Americans who have college loans. But it's primarily going to benefit white folks.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And my last thing, as it relates to the reparations issue, a lot of white people saying, "Listen, I never owned any slave. I wasn't born there. My family was immigrants. You know, they never owned enslaved Africans." We're not saying. The movement for reparations is not saying that one white person individually is supposed to pay reparations. We're charging the American government. The American government participated in the transatlantic slave trade. American government benefited. They enacted laws to support it and to maintain it for hundreds of years. So when white people say, "Well, listen, I never was a slave owner," no one individual white person is being asked to pay reparations.
Right.
It's those entities, whether we're talking about the banks, whether we're talking about insurance companies, whether we're talking about corporations that were around then, they may change their name. Those are the individuals who participated and were responsible for the enslavement of Africans, and they should be forced to pay reparations, including the American government.
Right. And we're talking about a nation that benefited
That's right.
from slavery.
That's right.
But okay, thank you, brother. We appreciate that.
Yes, sir.
Michael Graves. Hannah Payne was the police officer that shot a 62-year-old black man in Georgia.
No, she's a civilian.
Oh, she was a civilian. I'm sorry.
Well, this is the update. Primarily, she was arrested this last month and got bail when she interceded and watched the black man during he had a diabetic fit. He drove away from a little fender bender, and she followed him for in excess of a mile. And then when he sort of parked his car, she pinned him in and told him, "Get out of the car, get out of the car, get out of the effing car, I'm going to shoot you." And when he got out of the car, she actually opened fire and killed him. Well, she got a $100,000 bail, and that's Georgia justice, I imagine. But in any event, the grand jury was came back in, and instead of just hitting with the murder charge, she's been hit with new charges. She's now looking at what should have happened from the outset: felony murder, malice murder, aggravated assault, false imprisonment, and also possession of a firearm during a felony. These are all charges that she should have got hit with initially, and that's in Clayton County. So now she's going to be rearrested, to keep you updated. She's going to be rearrested, and just remember, her defense was that, at least what her lawyer says, that she feared for her life. But the 911 caller detective testified at this last grand jury. A detective testified, Haywood testified that she said after she killed him, she said to the 911, she was speaking out loud, and the 911 operator caught her saying, "He just shot himself with my gun." So she was covering herself right after she killed a 62-year-old black man who was going through a diabetic seizure and kept going after he bumped into another car. So that's the update. So hopefully this time she'll be arrested and fully prosecuted, and she should not ever hit the streets again, even though she's 21 years old. She should be an old lady by the time she comes out after doing such a dastardly deed.
All right. Noel, in Newark, New Jersey, I believe the police officer Crespo was involved in shooting at a moving vehicle. And I know you wanted to talk about that story.
Yeah, there was a horrific shooting, unfortunate shooting that happened earlier this year in January, but the video has just been released. Those who want to see it, you can see it on YouTube. Officer Giovanni Crespo. He's accused, he's been charged with aggravated manslaughter, for firing his firearm at a moving vehicle, and he did it at 3 particular locations. Just briefly, we're going to update the family on this particular case because there's a law enforcement organization that's supporting him. It was 2 individuals in the vehicle. They were ordered to stop. They didn't stop. They took off. After the vehicle was stopped for speeding. And this particular officer, he must have thought he was Clint Eastwood. On 3 separate instances, he ran up to the vehicle, and when they took off, he just started firing. He got back in his vehicle. They pursued it. The vehicle stopped again. He jumped out. When it took off, he started firing again. And then the last time, when the vehicle was cornered and stopped, he jumped out and actually stood next to the passenger seat and then opened up and fired and killed one, shot both of them in the head. One of them ultimately died. There was police alleged there was a gun in the vehicle, but his cowboy, attitude and actions. He's only had 2 years on the job. He's been arrested. We'll see if he's going to be convicted because there was a weapon in the car. He's claiming that they pointed the weapon at him. When you look at his actions, no police officer in his right mind is going to approach a vehicle in the manner that he did when occupants have a vehicle and they're pointing it at you because you can get shot. But this was the Newark, New Jersey community is outraged. Everybody's going to take a step back and see if if this particular officer ever gets convicted. But you can watch on YouTube as Officer Giovanni Crespo, and he fired his weapon in such a callous manner that he should be convicted. But this is just the latest of so many horrific police-involved shootings, and I don't think it's ever going to stop.
Michael. There was a black man that was almost beaten to death in Texas. He was coming out of a bar.
Yeah, in this particular case, Shaw in Carolina, him and a buddy was having drinks in a bar, having drinks actually with 2 white guys, and the 2 white guys were actually buying a lot of drinks for them. And as they walked out of the bar, these 2 white guys jumped them. These 2 white guys look like football players. Big guys, not only big, well-trained fighters, look like they training, and some of these ultra right-wing militias, they beat them, left them there, and the one guy that's fighting for his life now, Carolina, before the 2 white guys jumped in their white pickup truck, he said, what's his exact words? "You're a dead nigger. You're a dead nigga." So they was hugging them, drinking with them in the bar, and I don't know if they had some inside intel that the guy was married to a white girl. I don't know if they knew that. The stories haven't come out yet to disclose that, but in any event, they might have known that already. So he left him for dead, beat him really bad, and certainly this was in Southern Texas. In Republic, Texas, and so that's where it stands now. If you know the old saying about beware of Greeks bearing gifts, why would you be in a bar? And this is my whole purpose in doing this show is for you to develop critical analysis, so we can all, as a family, develop critical analysis, develop context and perspective, not that lightweight stuff, to really understand what's really going on. Why would you be in a bar with white people in Texas, of all places, but anywhere, and not accepting your own and being around your own and thinking everything is lottie-dottie, everybody? And so you go and do something like that, and these same guys turn around and leave you there for dead, beat you to death, and say you're a dead nigga on their way away from you. So that's a lesson learned, a very expensive lesson if you live, and hopefully you will live. But, then again, well, you going back to your white wife, so it is what it is.
Before we go to the phones, I just wanted to, one point that I forgot to mention with the Newark, New Jersey police officer who was engaged in that shooting, and most of the horrific police shootings that we see around the nation, You know, when we talk about what happened with Philadelphia, when the officers are articulating on their own time amongst each other, when they think the world is not looking, and they have all this racist, disrespectful, inflammatory, hateful language, you know, these shootings that we talk about each week that occur throughout the nation, we believe there's a connection between, as Michael said, the language and the actions of these police officers. So, you know, when you have over 300 police officers spewing hatred towards members of the African American community, I contend every week that we talk about these instances that there has to be some national calling on a review of law enforcement, police officers' actions, and our neighbors. It's not good enough for police officers to have these little basketball tournaments with members of our youth or these little cookouts. That's all well and fine. But there's a genuine problem of hate, disrespect, and racism between members of law enforcement. Too many members that carry the badge, that walk around our neighborhood with a gun. It's too many of them that have this hateful mentality, and it has to be dealt with. It has to be, you know, everybody's asking, with all these incidents consistently happen all over the nation, no one's connecting the dots. No one's saying, yo, wait a minute, there's a problem, because this should be the exception. Unfortunately, it has become the rule as opposed to the exception.
And there has to be a collective response. You know, I was just watching and reading the article about the Democratic hopeful Buttigieg, you know how they pronounce his name.
Right. Buttigieg, yeah.
He's being challenged about a shooting that occurred in Indiana, and I commend that community who's come out really strong and really staunch and saying, listen, all that nonsense you're talking is exactly that nonsense. You need to do something about it. And it troubles me when these elected officials attempt to appease our community with soft words, with we're going to investigate, we're going to look into, and we're going to do this. But there's never any substance behind the language, behind the verbal response. So we have to come together, and as you're stating, I believe that you're stating, we have to come together collectively. There has to be a collective response to address the constant attack and barrage of killings that exist by police officers in our community.
And in this state, I mean, in that particular city, the population is 40%, and the police department is only 10% black.
Right.
And those of you who are not paying attention with this racist Bill de Blasio, the numbers of black police officers in New York City is steadily decreasing. It's not reflective of our population at all. In all of these states and all these police departments, there seems to be a concerted effort not to have black people join these particular agencies, these law enforcement agencies. So this way they feel free in spewing their racial hatred against members of our community.
Now, and that same mayor had a black police commissioner, and he fired him over something that was just so nonsense, so much nonsense, that allegedly he was listening to phone calls of members of his department. Now, to fire someone, if that in fact occurred, I don't know what the investigation revealed, but I mean, that's just ridiculous to me. But we're ready for our phone calls. Let me see if we have a call on the line. First caller, welcome to Community Cop. Where you calling from? Quick question or comment? All right, I don't know if we're having an issue with our...
First of all, we know that our people are at war. And America and the different police departments and everybody else has shown us that they always have been at war with our people. So one main thing that we have to understand is we need to come together with one priority, which is going to make us understand who our true enemy is and bring us together under that thought alone to move forward. Second of all, they have a rent stabilization forum tomorrow at City Hall, City Council. Everybody's interested in rent stabilization and when they're doing us in the city about apartments, they should be there. 1 o'clock. My last point is this here, brother. If you look at the way the president is treating people of color, putting kids in cages, right? Depriving them of soap, toothpaste, and different things like that, and putting them at facilities that's really detrimental to our health. We should understand that these people are not cared for. And Joe Biden has been shown to be a supporter of Talmadge and Eastman. And now we think about the way how evil and wicked these devils was. When anything came up in the Congress to help our people, they always came up with a filibuster. So our people, look at these people for who they truly are. They're not for you, and you need to come together and do something for yourself. Thanks, y'all, brothers, for our comment, and may Allah bless y'all and y'all family.
Thank you, brother, for your call. We appreciate you. Next caller, welcome to Community Cop. Were you calling from? Quick question or comment?
Oh yeah, how you brothers doing? This is the poet calling in. I never had a chance to thank Brother Mike for those tickets to the film festival. Me and my guest had a wonderful time.
Thank you, brother. And that was on behalf of Veronica Kidd, the People's Film Festival that's getting better. That was her gift.
Oh, okay. I got to meet her, and I got brother Nat Wood, so I was very
right.
Yeah,
I missed you, Mike. I seen you, but I couldn't get your attention. But then you left.
Oh man, next time.
All right, but
real
having
soon.
said that,
Something real soon.
Yes, what I want to do now is go back a little bit to whips and chips. 2 by 2 and then 6 by 6. They lined us up and used their whip. They had and tricks and gathered in a bunch of silver-tongued devils with lying lips, like a waiter with a gun while asking for a tip. Get out, I tell you, and don't trip. First chance you get, just give them the slip. No more delaying, it just ain't hip. Slave overboard, or is you taking a dip? Fuse my back, bloods and drips. Rise up, black people, now ain't that a flip? God gave us the gift to free and uplift. Blessed us with skills, we're fully equipped. Evil meat killing us, no liquor, don't sip. This poem is over, I'm fresh out of quits.
Yes, sir.
All right, brother. Thank you.
Yes,
Thank
sir.
you.
Yes, sir.
You know, we always appreciate your poems, brother. I appreciate when I see you when I'm up in Harlem, brother. You're doing a phenomenal job, brother. Just keep spitting that beautiful knowledge, man, and we appreciate it.
Brother, you have to put out a book. You know, because I know.
I gave you all a book before. I gave you all a book called From Slavery to Food Stamps at the Cotton Club when Michael was running for mayor.
Oh, you gave each of us a book?
No, I only gave you one book, though. Unfortunately, I didn't.
I'm about to say who you gave it to. All right. Well, brother, that was a while ago. You need to write another book, man, because you're very talented.
Actually,
brother.
I'm writing one. It's called Never March on an Empty Stomach.
Okay, this one I want to pay for it. This time I want to pay for the book. Keep it up, brother.
Okay.
We appreciate it, brother. Thank you, brother. Thank you
I
so much.
appreciate you, brothers. God
Okay.
bless you.
Right.
All right.
Next caller, welcome to Community Cop. Where you calling from? Quick question or comment?
Good evening, brothers. This is Sister Keisha from the Republic of Brooklyn.
All right.
Hotep, sister, my Hotep.
Good. Always enjoying the show, always sharing it with everybody on social media. And I'm glad that they're taking hold to this program because it is definitely needed. The story that Brother Mike went over with the brother in Texas who was pummeled by 2 white aggressionists.
Right.
I want our family to understand that and know that these type of incidents are going to escalate. We have to be very well informed on these white nationalist groups and how they operate. We have to educate ourselves on how they're growing in both the left and right wing. So I hope to see more of you at 103 Quincy Street next week, Wednesday, 7:30 p.m., where we've been going over this type of apparatus in society that we are being punished by. And as you said, Brother Noel, when you have these so-called politicians and so-called community activists and leaders having a 3-hour Senate hearing on reparations, a study of reparations, not even reparations, but a study of reparations, no tangibles whatsoever. And I personally confronted Coleman Hughes and let him know the farce that he was and the games he was trying to play on our people. If you've been aware, on social media, there is a video of Coleman Hughes spinning around in his underwear on a subway train, and this is the man they chose to speak on behalf of reparations for our people. This is a joke and a farce. We have to organize, we have to get together, and we have to have clandestine meetings to make things happen. And so, brothers, keep doing what you're doing.
Don't hang up. Don't hang up.
Right.
Don't hang up. Sister Keisha, did those 2 guys in Texas, did they know he was married to a white woman?
I have no idea, but it doesn't matter. You should never be comfortable
Right.
having drinks, socializing, with Urugu, especially in this day and time.
Absolutely.
You should always stand firm on your square, keep your head on the swivel. None of these people can we trust. None of them. But I hope there becomes a lesson to black men and black women. You want to marry within their culture? You want to hang out and buddy with them? You deserve what you get. This is wartime, and the battle is on.
Well, let me respond to that, Sister Keisha, because you said the battle is on, and Kareem earlier said we in a state of war. Well, it's an unfair battle if it's a battle, because right now they're doing all the fighting. And we acting like we still trying to embrace them. We still trying to endear ourselves to white folks. And people tell me I'm always on some black stuff. I just think I'm aware, but, I've been accused of hating white people as if I'm supposed to love them. I know the history. I know their history. Noel said 93% of the time America's been at war. He's being kind, because there hasn't been a time where America hasn't been at war, because even when they're not at war abroad, they're at war at home. So if they're not killing Native Americans, General Amherst killed so many Native Americans, they named a town after him and a college. That's what they do with their heroes. General Amherst, look at Amherst University, or look at the town of Amherst. That's what they do. That's how they honor their own. I'm saying that if there's a war, if we were at a battle and we were in a football field, if you at the 30-yard line and I'm at the 50-yard line, you shooting at me and I'm walking like it's a sunny day outside and I'm enjoying the sun, I'm not at war. You at war. I'm getting ready to get killed because you're the one that's fighting. So right now, the average black person is not at war. They are being victimized. You're talking, Sister Keisha, about the storm clouds coming. You a war correspondent because you're telling people the storm is coming, and yet we have people. So I hope people come to see your presentation Wednesday. I know I'm going to be there, but I'm just saying, for the most part, we are not aware of our surroundings, our environment, and certainly we don't understand our mission. Because if we understood our mission, we wouldn't be in this situation.
All right.
Absolutely, brother.
Thank you, Sister.
What y'all doing?
You know what, Sister Keisha, you're gonna have to come do the show with us. Let's work out a day. Come and do the show with us. We don't have to wait till if who's ever on assignment, come do the show with us one day.
Absolutely, we'll make it happen.
And keep up the good work, sis.
Thank you for your call. We appreciate the knowledge, and I know our studio audience, our audience appreciates it as well. Next caller, welcome to Community Cop. Where you calling from? Quick question or comment?
Good afternoon. That's me. My name is Mike. Call from New York City. Very briefly, I need you to give me a little history about something. When you talk about General Amherst and Custer, was the Battle of the Alamo, was that a war squad of the United States and the Jim Bowie and David Crocker? Was that, how are you taking, let's just pick up that Battle of the Alamo. Thank you, guys.
I didn't hear what he said.
Yo, brother, just say your question again, because you come in.
I said about the Alamo. Was that a Battle of the war? When they fought in Texas, the Alamo, Jim Bowie and David Crocker?
Well, there's a lot of things to it. For one thing, you have to understand that they took most of Mexico from Mexico, California, Oregon, and New Mexico, and so many states they took from Mexico, including Texas, which is one of the largest states in the country. They took it from them. And you have to remember, that war had something also to do with Mexico's stance against slavery. There came a time where slavery was outlawed in Mexico, and America took a position against that. So they had a lot of reasons why they started that war and took most of Mexico from Mexico and just left them what is now called Mexico, where the entire Southwest was all a part of Mexico. But that's a good point, and the fact is we should honor our own and understand who our historical enemy is. But when you've been enslaved your brain for so long, you take on the virtues of your enemy. Therefore, our standard of beauty is white. We love that which is Scandinavian, blonde hair, blue eyes, white skin. We love that. We love being around them. We want to be embraced by them. We want attaboys from them. We have surrendered our entire culture to them. That's why we are nothing but 20th century slaves for the most part. And the ones that are free among us, truly free mentally, are the ones that unfortunately, other blacks look at as crazy.
All right. Thank you for your call. Next caller, welcome to Community Cop. Were you calling from? Quick question or comment?
Am I in here?
Yes, sir. Where you calling from?
Oh, how you doing, gentlemen? My name is Alejandro. I'm calling from the Upper West Side, Manhattan.
Okay, go ahead. Quick question or comment?
Yeah, well, I was wondering, I want to pose a question from either of you gentlemen on the panel. If you could give a brief comment on this. Apparently, the Jesse Smollett case is back on the airwaves, and it appears that a judge has decided to appoint a special prosecutor to reinvestigate the case. And I was wondering what the community cop's position is on this resurfacing of this case. And I'll take my answer off the air.
But I really don't. Yeah.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
I really don't think we have an opinion on that particular case. I guess once more information comes out, we'll see. I think it's one of these crazy scenarios. But whether it's be him as an actor, what he stands for, and that whole particular accusations is, it's all over the place.
Yeah.
Well, he manipulated the whole thing. So whatever comes out of this, he brought this to his own doorstep. That's the facts. That robbery did not exist. He brought all these things into existence. Why, I won't get into, because I don't know anything about him. I've never seen that show that he's on, never once. So I don't know what role he plays in that show. But whatever happens, he brought it to his own doorstep. But it's interesting that these white gay organizations are supporting him. So that tells me something.
All right, next caller. Welcome to Community Cop. Where you calling from? Quick question or comment?
This is Eddie from the Bronx.
Go ahead, Eddie from the Bronx. Go ahead,
Bronx.
quick question.
Yes,
Okay.
I'm looking at this whole thing with the whole issue of the reparations thing, and I think that if Trump gets that second term, I don't think there's going to be any reparations. And after that, I don't think there's going to be more elections if he gets that second term. And you got to question, why isn't any of these so-called candidates of the Democratic Party raising the issue of reparations? They're not even raising the issue of the police killing black people all over the United States, like what you saw with Buttigieg. Black people got to be out of their mind voting for this nut. I would like to know what you all think. I'm out.
Yeah, well, my thoughts on this political response to reparations and all these issues that affect the black community, these politicians are just trying to get the black vote. These issues have been in existence. We talk about police brutality. These are nothing new. These aren't issues that are just surfacing. These are things that have been affecting our community for decades, for centuries. But the response by elected officials have been non-existent when we talk about rectifying these issues. But every time there's an election, they will throw a few words out to discuss these issues, to appease our community, to make it appear as if they have true concerns. But, these laws that exist, they're not enforcing them. They're not holding these people accountable. So I have no faith in these elected officials who are speaking concerning these issues, that they truly want to do something to ensure that there's some fairness and equity and a true response to the ills that are affecting African people.
And if you remember Malcolm X in his speech, The Ballad of the Bullet, the same scenario that he talked about then occurs now. And he says, they come while they're running, while they're campaigning, they discuss issues which we believe will benefit our community. They make us all kind of promises. But then when they get elected, nothing happens. Malcolm said, we put them first and they put us last. We put them in the White House, we find ourselves in the doghouse. There's no difference between a Republican and a Democrat. Barack Obama was a proponent of reparations. He was the president of the United States. How many times did you hear him talk about reparations? Or how many times did you hear him mention or that he supports the descendants of enslaved Africans to receive reparations? Bill Clinton, you say the president, none of them. There's no distinction. There's cosmetic differences between the two. Both parties are run by white supremacists. Both parties have a philosophy of white supremacy. Only the Democrats come before you and make you all kind of promises, but when they get in elected office, they don't know you. We see this every single presidential year, that they make these kind of glamorous promises, and you have members of our community, clergy, come out and endorse these people. Once they get in office, they do nothing, absolutely nothing. There's no difference between the Democrat and Republican.
Right.
Right, and so my comments will be brief because Noah hit it out the park. I think that once we can truly objectively look at things with a critical analysis, as I said, perspective and context, you should know that there is no difference in a Democratic and Republican. I know that you pose a question, why aren't the Democrats doing this? Well, there's no difference in a Democrat or a Republican, depending on where you are located physically. You're going to be a Democrat or a Republican. There are some exceptions in Staten Island. Basically, that borough is a Republican borough. The other boroughs are Democratic, but very rarely, but you do get Republican mayors. But for the most part, it's based on geography. But the thinking is the same. They will bust you in the head if they catch you in the wrong place in Staten Island, but the same thing will happen in Sheepshead Bay. It doesn't matter. So I'm just saying, for the record, critically analyze situations. One thing I tell you about law enforcement and the military, it teaches you to look at things as they are in a militarily scientific way. And if you do that, you eliminate a lot of confusion. You won't look at things as you want them to be. You see things as they are. And that's what gives you power. When you can see things as they are, now you know what to reach for.
All right. Next caller, welcome to Community Cop. Where you calling from? Quick question or comment?
I'm calling from Brownsville, Brooklyn.
Uh-oh. Go ahead,
Brownsville
Brooklyn.
never ran, never will. You know that's right.
Jesse Smollett, his family is friends with the Obamas. That's why that prosecutor gave him special treatment.
Wow.
Now he was making about $10,000 a week. He wanted more money. That's why he pulled that hoax. And because of what he did, the show Empire is being canceled. He caused at least 100 people, all the extras, to lose their job. And 99% of them was black.
Wow. Didn't
All
know
right.
that.
Okay, thank you for that call and that information.
Wow.
Next
Okay.
caller, welcome to Community Cop. Where you calling from? Quick question or comment?
Yes, hello.
Yeah, where you calling from, caller?
I'm calling from Brooklyn. This is Jim.
Okay, all right. Go ahead, Jim. Quick question or comment?
Quick comment. Anybody, did your brother find out what happened to the brother that had the video of Eric Garner, Ramsey Order? And my other comment is, when these people, these families get these settlements from the police, with somebody that gave the video, the family should give the person that had the video some of that money. That's my comment. Okay.
I agree. I think you're right. The last I heard, he's still upstate right now because they put together some small little charges and they're running them concurrently. I hear he's catching a lot of hell up there. They putting rat feces and dog feces stuff in his food. They're messing with him. They're doing everything under the sun. But, there's a God that sits high and looks low. Hopefully he'll survive his stay there upstate New York because he did help the family. And unfortunately, to be candid with you, the Garner family did not support him, did not go to the court when he was going to court. The only one I think I remember coming there once was the daughter that unfortunately that passed. And you can correct me if I'm wrong, but they weren't. I was there in the courtroom. They weren't coming to court with him, and they wanted the instructions, truth be told, from Sharpton and his people. And Sharpton was the one that exposed Ramsey Order anyway. And I think through legal advisement, the family was told to stay away from Ramsey Order. And unfortunately, the police had a vendetta against him, and they got him.
And there's an organized attack on our community, and anyone like this particular man this system is designed to ensure that he is persecuted continuously and constantly. So, we can't be surprised by the amount of attacks that exist when we do things to support ourselves. But we have to come together collectively and work together and be a staunch force against this white supremacy attack that's based and being forced upon our people.
And the mere reason for him to be attacked, just shows the depravity of this system. All he did was take a video. He didn't participate in it. He didn't say anything. All he did was took a video. He didn't doctor the video. He didn't ad lib. He didn't add or subtract from the video. He just took a video and showed it. Yet he's received a whole lot of retaliation from this system because it is a repressive, it is a faulty, a racist, white supremacist system that doesn't want the truth unless the truth agrees with what they want to say, unless it supports them. So it's unfortunate that this brother is caught so much heck solely for taking the video and making it public.
Right, absolutely. All right, thank you, caller, for that call. We're running out of time, so we're going to go to our closing comments. Noel?
All right, Lynn, Kitty Cat, Little Mo, I love you all. We did one time want to talk about President Trump and, how he's being said that he had some constraint as regards to Iran. No, there's no constraint. He caused the problem, then he resolved his own problem, act like he has constraint. They want to attack Iran. Maybe we'll get back to that in another program. But Community Cop family, we love you. We thank you for all the comments that we get when we're in the street.
Yeah, just want to say again that storm clouds are rising. The storm clouds are arising. Why is it so difficult after 4 centuries here? 5 centuries if you want the collective. But 4 centuries here, and we don't understand the storm clouds are rising. Now, when storm clouds are outside your door, the odds are you're going to put on a certain type of clothes or you're going to use an umbrella, but you're going to do something. You're not going to walk outside in a T-shirt and shorts and sneakers when there's a storm, whether it's a snowstorm, windstorm, or rainstorm, some kind of storm. You're not going to ignore it and walk out as if it's a bright summer day. So I'm just saying that to that black man who's fighting for his life right now in South Texas, you made a decision, and I know Keisha was straight up when she said whatever